Mr. Secretary, I want to recognize with you that Section 8 and other housing programs are successful in every one of our districts, that a housing program has to chiefly be evaluated based on whether it provides housing. And getting people off the street and in housing is a good thing. Whether they then get a well-paying job is a little bit outside your department. And I look forward to working with the last gentleman to defeat fast track so that we can get the high-paying jobs that will lead not only to successful housing programs, but successful economic futures for those you benefit. But I think it's wrong for us to say we're going to cut back on Section 8 until you give us perfect numbers and until you establish that providing housing means somebody gets a good-paying job too. I don't know if you, I'll give you
what I said is
that
one outcome is, an important outcome is that somebody has a roof over their head. That is what the Department of Housing is for. We are first and foremost about housing. However, to the second question, do I believe that we should also make investments, and we are making some investments, that seek to get folks to a stronger track so that they can achieve the American dream? Of course I do. And should we look at the outcomes of that? Yes, we should, and I think we can work together on that. But to say that it doesn't count at all, that somebody has a roof over their head, that's just ridiculous.
Well said, and I now want to move to FHA and a couple technical areas where FHA has a rule or a policy that clashes with another federal rule, and hope that FHA moves in the direction of the other federal rule. The first example of this is with properties subject to transfer fees. Now, 99% of transfer fees are terrible. Thank you at FHA for working to prohibit them. FHFA, which of course oversees Fannie and Freddie, has done a slightly more nuanced job. Instead of prohibiting all of them, they've only prohibited the 99% that are bad. The 1% that are helpful are those that benefit the property, that are key to the business plan of homeowners associations, and fund homeowners associations by a reasonable amount when the property is transferred. So I wonder whether you would look at a technical tweak to the FHA regulations and see whether the FHFA's very similar regulations, but a little bit more nuanced, might be better for both similar federal programs.
Thank you very much for that question. Let me just very briefly say that at FHA, our primary concern, of course, is to ensure that responsible borrowers can access credit. We also want to continue to play that counter-cyclical role that FHA has historically played. And on top of that, we are interested where it makes sense in policy that encourages neighborhood stability, for instance. And we are looking at matching FHFA on this issue that you brought up, and so we'd love to follow up with you and with your staff on that and give you an update on what we're up to.
Good. I mean, it's similar agencies trying to carry out the same policy, and they ought to have identical or very close to identical rules, and in this one case, your sister agency has a more sophisticated rule. Federal statute generally requires that you have to stop paying mortgage insurance once you have a 78% situation. You've got a situation where borrowers have to keep paying FHA forever, except they don't if they refinance. Now, if they had to pay forever, I'd say, well, maybe you need the money. But if you're not going to get the money, they're just going to refinance, then I would say that's I've been through some refinancings. It's a lot of paperwork. And then it would be easier for borrowers if they're trying to compare FHA insurance with private insurance if you were offering the same product. That is to say, something that's canceled at 78%. Will you take a look at that?
We're always, of course, looking at how we can be sensitive to the conditions out there. As you know, this life of loan issue came to pass during the last few years where there was a need to do everything that we could to ensure that we built up our reserves. And we want to do what's prudent, always willing to look at this issue.